Go. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for June 16th. We'll begin with the special order calendar decision items. Item number 1, 278-86BZ, 1677 Bruckner Boulevard, the Bronx. Eric Palatnik.
We received community board's recommendation or letter of no objection. They discussed the location of the menu board speaker. Are there any outstanding issues?
No.
Okay.
Item number 2, 14292BZ, 473 541 6th Street, Brooklyn. Kramer, Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel.
Are there any issues with this? The stay has been lifted by the courts, and there is therefore no reason for us to not proceed with decision.
Good.
Item number 3, 11-93BZ, 4645 Kissimmee Boulevard, Queens, the office of Sheldon LaBelle.
All right, any concerns with this? They provided us a drawing showing the enclosure, and they confirmed that they're not doing catering, and they do not serve alcohol. But I believe at the last hearing, they did note that people may bring their own bottle. But, ultimately, I think this issue is not really before us. And if the community board has concerns, they could identify that to the state liquor authority. Okay?
Item number 4, 32609BZ, 37-10 Union Street, Queens, the office of Brian Cave.
All right, any concerns with this? We were not waiting for anything? Okay.
Item number 5, 49-11BZ, 135 West 20th Street, Manhattan, the office of Washington Bernstein.
All right, any issues with this?
No.
Okay, good.
Continued hearing items. Item number 6, 611-52BZ, 35-35 24th Street, Queens, the office of Jerry Caliendo.
The applicant has revised their application to now actually ask for an extension of time to complete construction. This had to do with the board's grant that was, I think, probably about 10 years ago, if not longer than that, for an enlargement by 3,700 square feet approximately. They noted that there was a downturn in the economy, and that's the reason why they didn't proceed. It's a business that's been here for a long time, and they're looking to extend that time and continue to have the enlargement that the board granted still on the books, and they hope to pursue to construct that. Are there any issues with that?
I don't have any substantive issue with it at all. I think it's fine that we give them more time and the flexibility to do this enclosure whenever they want. It's just that the second paragraph of their June 3rd letter says there are no proposed changes. And
Yes, I know.
they should just clear that up because actually they're going to change.
It does seem like they're going to change, and similarly, they have provided us a drawing which shows the existing and proposed condition. The proposed condition does not show the enlargement, so either they should provide us with the previously approved plans or some representation of that, because otherwise there's, again, a contradiction in what we may support and agreed to as a part of the extension vis-a-vis the fact that they want to, in fact, enlarge this within a time period, which would probably give them 4 years.
Right. A stranger reading the file would be confused.
Yes, that is true. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Item number 7, 75178BZ, 200-15 Northern Boulevard, Queens, Rothkrug, Inspector.
All right, questions and comments? It seems that they've really cleaned up the site. They put the container, and from the photographs, it seems they actually managed to move all those tires into the container. Questions and comments?
No more issues.
I mean, they checked on the hours of operation for
Yes.
area businesses, which I thought was helpful. It's a very commercial area. I don't see the hours as being any problem. I would note, though, that it is still really pink.
Yes. Oh, the community board did note that they didn't expect it to be repainted as yet. But when they should do maintenance, they can think of a more appropriate color that would suit the surroundings.
We don't make aesthetic judgments.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any concerns with this case? All right, we can consider closing it.
Item number 8, 77585BZ, 13333 Brookvale Boulevard, Queens, Sheldon LaBelle.
The applicant revised their papers. I thought it was very clear as to now what they're asking for. They're asking to eliminate the hours of operation. They're asking to eliminate the term. They're asking us to allow for a revised layout and have unattended parking, and also make modifications to the treatment of the boundaries so that it can be incorporated with the remaining portions of property that is under the same ownership. We had asked them last time to notify the neighbors. They did that. We had asked them to also look at possibly doing some landscaping along the side street, which is adjacent or in front of the residential. And they've said that they're going to bring back the street trees, for the pits were non-existent. I think there are only two street trees right now. And that they would have an edge condition, which would include hedges up from, I think, 4 to 6 feet.
4 to 6 feet.
Questions and comments? All right, I thought this was responsive, and perhaps what they could do is in their drawings, just clearly give us a detail of how they want to do the edge treatment along the street, and show where the plantings for the trees would be. I think that'd be helpful. And possibly if you close this case, but leave the record open for them to make those modifications.
Great.
Okay.
Item number 9, 24503BZ, 160-11 Willets Point Boulevard, Queens. Jeffrey Chester.
Any questions and comments? I know Commissioner Auntie Brown, you had raised this issue about the excessive signage.
Yeah, and for the most part, the photos show that they have removed the sign. However, above the mushroom board, there is still some extra signage that I don't believe they are accounting for. It may not be more than like 10 square feet, but I don't think that's in their analysis sheet. And it's kind of looks like a cardboardy kind of add-on on top that might not even be permanent, but if they could address that.
Other comments? I know the other board members also had raised concerns about signage. Any other issues? Yes.
On their proposed and on their existing plans, they show a speed bump at the exit of the drive-through, which doesn't exist. Is there some reason why they have removed it or not installed it?
And in the proposed, is it shown or?
Yes.
Okay, so we lost them about that. But when you went to the site, it was not?
It also is not there, right?
Excuse me. Okay.
New cases, item number 10, 99784BZ, 798-804 Union Street, Brooklyn, the office of Sheldon LaBelle.
Right. You board members know this case. They're now coming to us asking to convert the building to residential, which is actually more conforming with the existing zoning. Questions?
Retail.
And retail of the ground floor, which is again allowed by the C11. Questions and comments? Vice Chair?
No, and I think they're creating, at the rear of the building, they're going to reduce it by 5 feet so that there's sufficient space between that and the buildings on President Street. It's, it's conforming use. I don't see any objection to it at all.
All right, other comments? Commissioner Hinkson, then Commissioner Martinez.
Could they just clarify their issue between whether they have enough space between buildings? It was not clear to me. It sort of read as two different numbers in their papers, so if they could just clarify that, that would be.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that they meet the MDL.
That they meet the MDL,
Okay.
and that's good.
Commissioner Martinez?
Along the same lines, I was wondering if 48 feet between windows is required by the MDL, will it limit the ability for the buildings to the rear to enlarge if they have that capability?
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, I just had one issue which I thought would be helpful for the record, is that if they could just give us a table of what the existing square footage is and what the proposed square footage is. As you know, that they're converting some of the space at the roof to mezzanine, to actually like penthouse apartments and mezzanine. So I just want to make sure that in the end, the total zoning square footage remains the same. So if they provide us that table, it will help us make sure the calculations are in tune with that.
Item number 11, 2403BZ, 17802 Union Turnpike, Queens, Washoe Bernstein.
All right, questions and comments? Any issues with this case?
They added a shed at the rear of the building, 10-foot by 30-foot shed, and the community board requested some sort of a sound barrier. I think the homes to the rear are elevated a little, and there's no landscaping along the rear, and I guess they've had some noise complaints.
All right, let's ask the applicant to respond to that. Other questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Montanez. If you go to the site, and there are some grassy areas in the rear that they really could plant on that just have like sparse grass. So there's definitely room to put up some sort of a barrier in terms of plantings.
Okay.
And while they're at it, there are a few dead trees on the eastern lot line. They can replace those as well.
Okay. All right.
Item number 12, 27107BZ, 215 West 23rd Street, Manhattan, Eric Plotnick.
All right, questions and comments? The board may remember this case. It was in fact a variance and PCE on West 23rd Street.
It's primarily the change in operator, right?
That's correct.
Well, I wanted to know if there was going to be any change in program. Because
As a
I guess
result
they
of the-
are doing weights, the way they've arranged their program, it seems like the most potentially disturbing to residents would be at the lowest level. I just also would like to know if they are proposing any noise attenuation.
Okay.
And I don't know what selectorized weights are. If they could explain that to me.
Since I know nothing about the gym, I can't respond to that. Okay, so that's selectorized weights.
Yes.
Okay.
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 1351-13A, 10 Woodward Avenue, Queens, call Safaro.
Any issues with this? I think it was pretty straightforward. GCL? Okay.
Item number 1459-13A, call Safaro, 11-30, 143rd Place.
Any concerns with this case? Okay, very good.
Continued hearing items, item number 15, 166-12A, and item number 16, 107-13A, 638 East 11th Street, Manhattan.
The applicant is still working with the buildings department, so we can adjourn this for a few months. As you know, they're trying to resolve the issues.
Item number 17, 110-13A, 120 President Street, Abrams, Fryerston.
We will adjourn this case as well. They're still working with DOB to put their sign-offs.
Item number 18, 296-13A, 280 Bond Street, Brooklyn, the office of Jack Lester.
All right, since our last hearing, which was, I believe, at the beginning of April, there was an adjournment, the owner of the property gave us additional information, particularly related to, I believe, the years 2010 to 2012, which we had asked for. But they also gave us additional information which filled in various gaps in terms of other years. I thought that the way they laid out their table was very helpful because it did go year by year and provide us with varying types of information, some that are given more weight by the buildings department, some which are given less weight, and I think they provided us with the analysis which the board was asking them for in terms of evidence. I think, okay, so other commissioners, Vice Chair?
I think the property owner has some really serious credibility problems. I think he either lied to the court or he's lying to us, and I think that calls into question basically his whole evidentiary package. I will revisit it, but I'm troubled by it.
Okay. I think one of the things for me, at least in looking at this information, is I've given the least amount of weight to the affidavits and to any kind of testimony. I think, at least for me, I've sort of focused on what is actually there in the record. Other comments? Yes, Commissioner Hinkson?
I would tend to agree with you, Chair. I agree that when there is a discrepancy in what an owner says and between us and other judicial bodies or even here being contradictory, I think that one has to really look at sort of the empirical evidence that is not dependent necessarily on, a person's testimony or a person's affidavit, because sometimes that can be somewhat self-serving. So in looking at evidence that is neutral, I think I prefer to look at that and have more weight placed on those pieces of evidence. So in looking at their presentation for evidence that is, somewhat neutral, I think that I'm of a mind that they have met their burden.
Thank you. Commissioner Martinez?
Yes, I agree that, I agree with the Department of Buildings that there doesn't seem to be enough evidence of a discontinuance. And I think the DOB clarified a couple of issues for me. One being when they would consider the use of the plumbing business finished, and that's when they stopped the use of their temporary office and basically cleaned out the building, which was June 2012. And they also clarified whether leasing to the lighting company, they basically say it would require a change of C of O, but they had time to do that.
Right.
And it is another non-conforming use, so that really didn't bother me that much.
Commissioner?
While I initially was quite concerned about the testimony that was given to the court system, I do understand that that is a different entity from, the City of New York Department of Buildings. And, I'm not really going to sit here and try and figure out what was going on inside that motivated them to either tell the truth to them and not tell the truth to us, or lie to them and tell the truth to us. Instead, I wanted to focus on the evidence that they did give us for continuing use. And the fact of the matter is, to me, a warehouse is a pretty passive use. It really is for storage of things. There aren't going to be a lot of active machinery and noises and things going on that would alert you to the fact that it's actually in active use while it might still be in active use. So I looked at the evidence in the forms of the electrical bills, the phone bills, and the photos that show storage of the business vehicles on site. And to me, I would then agree with Department of Buildings that there really isn't enough contrary evidence to show that there was discontinuance of the non-conforming use. And I think that we have to be really careful when we take away property rights. We have to be absolutely sure. And in this case, I'm not sure, beyond a reasonable doubt or any doubt, that there was some sort of discontinuance of this warehouse use for more than 2 years.
Is there any additional information that we need? Because it seems that at this point, both parties have, and all parties, because the building department sort of has responded back as well, in terms of the information that they're going to provide into the record. I think, in fairness to Mr. Lester, the last submission came from DOB, so he can speak tomorrow. Of course, all parties can speak tomorrow, but we would also give him additional time to respond in writing to the buildings department's papers. Okay?
That's fair.
Okay.
New cases, item number 198914A, 215 East 64th Street, Manhattan, Kramer, Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel. We've got a
Yes, this is the second case we're seeing where under new text that was provided, the MDL allows building staff department first and then BSA to allow an extension of time to get a CFO for buildings that long-standing have been hotels and now want to get that corrected on their CFO. The standard for us is to really make sure that, yes,
We have
adjournment?
a postponement request?
Yes, we do have a postponement request, so they're not going to speak at all, is that right? I know they wanted more time.
Yeah, I don't think they will appear tomorrow. I'm not.
All right, so if it's an adjournment, we can adjourn it. They've asked for more time because they would like to make sure that they get the fire department sign-off, and that would be critical for the record. So if there are no issues, we can just adjourn this.
Item number 20, 10314A, 55 Eckford Street, Brooklyn, Ackerman, Centerfit.
All right, this is a vested rights case. Questions and comments? The board has seen this case before. Vice Chair?
It's fairly tortured history of the default and the new owner being unable to finance and all of that, but I think when you sort through it all, I think the record demonstrates significant expenditures. Clearly, there's been, substantial construction, and I don't think there is any question regarding the validity of the permits. So
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yes. Commissioner Otley Brown and then Commissioner Martinez. I agree.
I also agree with the two of you. I just had one question. It is very clear that there would be a serious loss would they not be able to complete. However, they did mention two different figures, and I just wanted to know whether one of them might be an error. In one portion, they say that to demolish and redesign, it would be 2.2
Right.
million, but in the conclusion, it talks about a loss of almost 2.7 million. So is there something additional added into the conclusions number that brings it up? And so if they could just explain that, whether or not there's a discrepancy or something missing, that's
Okay.
all.
All right. Commissioner Martinez?
Regarding the serious loss, I was a little, they said in their papers that it's the FAR and building height that are non-compliant. So I was just questioning, is the existing base of the building compliant? If they could just say, what does the rezoning actually do to the, they didn't mention anything about yards. So I wasn't clear what the serious loss, what the redesign would be.
Okay, I know that they said that they have to demolish everything and redesign, but you want to understand what the as-of-right condition would be and how it
Yes.
would be different from what is already on the site.
Right, because they didn't mention yards or anything like that in their papers.
Okay. All right.
Zoning calendar, decision items. Item number 21, 54-12BZ, 6539 102nd Street, Queens, Gerald Caliendo.
Any concerns? No. Good.
Item number 22, 211-12BZ, 164 Coffee Street, Brooklyn, Rothkrug.
We'll defer the decision. We're waiting DEP sign-off.
Item number 23, 263-12BZ, 232 and 222 City Island Avenue, the Bronx, Sheldon LaBelle.
I believe we're ready to vote this out. Okay, sorry. We're not quite sure as yet. All right, so there's just ongoing issues with DEP, and as you know, this is in the Brownfield program, so it is also partly under the jurisdiction of DEC as well. So we're just trying to sort out those issues, and it's possible that it may also require E-designation. So we'll defer the decision. Well, if we get the sign-off this afternoon, we will allow all of you to know about it.
Okay.
But in the event that we don't, we can defer this decision. Are there any other issues?
No.
Okay, good.
Item number 24, 347-12BZ, 42-31 Union Street, Queens. Law Office of Vincent Petraro.
Okay, any comments or questions? They revised the statement, gave us better drawings. Okay, good.
Item number 25, 103-13BZ, 81 Jefferson Street, Brooklyn, Rothkrug.
All right, we can vote this case out, right? So that's good, we've got all the sign-outs in place.
Item number 26, 213-13BZ, 3858-60 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island, Rothkrug.
All right, any concerns with this? I think last time we closed the case. Okay.
Item number 27, 273-13BZ, 321 East 60th Street, Manhattan, Ackerman, Centerfit.
All right, we can vote this case out as well. We've got the sign-off from DEP on air quality and noise.
Item number 28, 289-13BZ, 473-541 6th Street, Brooklyn, Kramer, Levin, Neftalis.
Any issues with this? We're ready to vote this out otherwise? Okay, very good.
Item number 29, 326-13BZ, 1616 Whitestone Expressway, Queens, Rothkrug.
Any concerns? No. Okay, great.
Continued hearing items, item number 30, 210-13BZ, 43-12 50th Street, Queens. The office of Sheldon LaBelle.
They provided us with a submission. Questions or comments? Vice Chair?
No?
Any issues with this? Yes.
They did address my issue
Yes.
concerning the brokerage fee for the PCE. Originally in the financials, they only had a brokerage fee for the community facility, and I stated that since this was a legalization, both of the scenarios should have a brokerage fee because both of them should be taken from a starting point of nothing is there. And so they did acknowledge that, and they reissued the financials with that adjustment, and it brings the proposed return down a little bit to a minus 0.7%. So I'm okay with that.
Okay. Any other comments?
Just
Yes.
the awning sign, they said they're going to take it down and remove the structure, but they should provide us photos.
Yes, I agree. They should provide the photos. And in terms of the windows at the rear, they said they will tint those windows, and I think if you look at the physicality of it, it's actually sort of a strip at the top and fairly low. So I think that would help in any potential impacts with lighting of the facility. We'll ask them to give us a photograph of the removed awning.
Item number 31, 277-13BZ, 1769 Fort George Hill, Manhattan. Jeffrey Chester.
The applicants ask for an adjournment.
Item number 32, 3-14BZ, 12-22 East 89th Street, Manhattan. Friedman Gottbaum.
I thought the applicant gave us a fairly comprehensive response to a series of issues that were raised. I think one of the big things they've done is they've modified their plans, and they have now provided the rear yard at the level that it is, or at the depth that it is right now, except for an additional second floor and mezzanine. And I believe they've also given us a reasonable explanation as to the height of the gymnasium at the roof of the building. Questions and comments?
You know, I would agree. We asked them to maintain the pre-existing rear yard condition, and they explained, they did it, they were responsive to us, but they explained why they couldn't do it for the auditorium on the second floor. I think the opposition's suggestion that we somehow rearrange the space is just not, it's not a proper function for us. While at times we sometimes ask whether or not what a school is asking for really matches its programmatic needs, but to just sort of randomly tell an educational institution to move certain classrooms or facilities so that there's a minimal decrease in height, I don't think that's the proper role for the board. I also think that, and I really would like to hear from Commissioner Montanez on the geotech aspect of it, because the opposition's suggestion was that things be moved into a sub-cellar.
Right.
I don't think we've ever forced an educational institution to do that. And then just finally, I think that the opposition's legal arguments made in the memorandum of law were more than sufficiently refuted by the applicant's response.
I agree. Commissioner Martinez, do you want to speak about that?
Yes.
Because they did provide us additional information which relates to the fact that they actually explored this at one point.
Right.
And did a thorough subsurface investigation.
Yes, I think they gave us 2 geotech reports, which have 9 test pits and 1 boring in the sidewalk, which shows that the top of rock is approximately 2 to 4 feet below the basement slab. I don't question that information, and I actually think that that's almost, another site hardship. They could add to the A finding that they're not able to go lower.
Okay. I think that's helpful. It definitely reinforced the evidence in the record. Other comments?
I just had a question concerning the existing elevator bulkhead. They're making it larger for, I guess, a limited use, an additional elevator that will only be used in a limited way. Could they just explain what that elevator is for a little bit better? Because I guess it does make that bulkhead a little bit taller.
And if they can also just explain if they have to go back to landmarks to get that approved,
Right.
because the bulkhead is changing.
Right.
I just had one other
Yes.
comment. I thought that the applicants, the Zubatkin letter and the side-by-side comparison chart
Yes.
that showed the differing timelines, I found that to be very persuasive. I think to require a school to have a multi-year construction project would be absolutely unreasonable.
I agree. Okay.
New cases, item number 33, 300-12BZ, 36 West 93rd Street, Manhattan. David F. Hutcher.
All right, this is a variance to allow Grammar School to enlarge its current facilities, primarily to consolidate its middle school in one location. It's between 92nd and 93rd Street. There's an existing school that exists there. Their arguments are driven by the programmatic needs of the school itself, the constraints placed by the existing building and through lot. And they clearly have the square footage for the school to expand, but it's really a matter of how to mask that in a way which would meet the programmatic needs, but at the same time would also satisfy landmarks, and as you know, landmarks has given a C of A for this. Questions and comments, Vice Chair?
I would just like the applicant to expand a little bit on its representation that having only an upper and a lower division is an outdated approach to school organization. I'd like them to just bolster that argument because they just put it out there as a statement and didn't really cite any authorities or give a further explanation of that.
Okay.
It's adding 10 middle school classrooms and an art and tech studio and a library and offices. And as you said, it's not floor area that they're talking about here. It's basically how do they use the existing floor area and shape it into a school that functions well for their educational mission. I do think that the concerns expressed by the community board and the neighbors with regard to traffic in the area is something that the school needs to address. If we think back to, I think it was just last week, the Greek religious school in Queens, where there had been a series of meetings and sit-downs with people in the neighborhood and the civics and the electeds, and really came up with a plan that, if properly implemented, will help solve some of those serious traffic problems. I'd like to see a similar effort here because I think it's a real issue for the neighborhood.
One of the things is that the traffic issues are really existing today. And I
Right.
think that in terms of the variance before us, I don't believe there's any serious, significant addition to that traffic with the increase in enrollment, which is about 30 students. But I understand that since the school exists there, it's just being a good neighbor, it's worthwhile to look at perhaps a traffic plan, given that there are many facilities around these few blocks, and they should do that in good faith, working with the community. Yes, Commissioner Brad?
I mean, I do agree that it would be definitely the neighborly thing to do to have some sort of traffic monitor or facilitator that could somehow wave cars in, help take children out of cars and get the cars moving as fast as possible. It would certainly be the nice neighborly thing to do for the community. However, living across the street from a school, schools throughout New York City, they have traffic problems when it's time for school children to come in the morning, as well as when they leave. And it's, you know, whether you're on a wide street or a narrow street, cars double park if they can, they triple park if they can, and they basically block traffic in both directions, even if it's a two-way street, for the 15 to 20 minutes that it takes for children to either get in or leave. It's just a fact of living in a very dense city. So, you know, that being said, I don't find it terribly alarming that traffic comes to a standstill here, but it would be the right thing for the school to do.
Other comments? Any other comments?
I
Yes,
just
yes.
one further thing. I would like a little further exposition of the column and foundation support system issue. I think that informs how the layout of the additional classrooms will be. Honestly, I just didn't understand it, so.
Okay. Yes.
And could they just speak a little bit about the area at the roof, the outdoor area. What mitigating sorts of things can they do to limit the impact on adjacent residential?
Okay,
A question
Yes.
also I forgot to ask.
sure.
Are they planning to have any of that space on the roof be outdoor play area? And I'm speaking specifically for the space on the 92nd Street side, because once they add the floor in, that's going to bring, if there is a play area, almost at the window level of the adjacents.
Okay. I think it's similar to what Commissioner Hinkson is talking about, but you're talking about, I know, one is on top of the 9th floor, the other is really at the, on top of the, I guess, the 4th floor.
Item number 34, 350-12BZ, 5-32nd Street, Brooklyn, the office of Sheldon LaBelle.
All right, this is a very unusual case, primarily because its A finding is almost entirely resting on the fact that there was a deed restriction placed by the federal government when this property was disposed to the nonprofit, which is Overcoming Love Ministries, and requiring them to do housing, I guess permanent housing or supportive housing for previously homeless persons. They're proposing 200 units. It's a site which is fairly large and really within the heart of the IBC, Sunset Park Industrial Area. And it is in an area where you actually have no residential whatsoever until several blocks away. We have been very skeptical, and I don't believe ever really allowed a deed restriction in and of itself to be the basis for the A finding. I know that they've talked about subsurface conditions and the need to remediate, but it appears that the remediation associated, especially for an as-of-right development, is not significant, and we may raise concerns whether that itself elevates itself to be a hardship, given this is an M3 district, and that is in fact the most intense manufacturing district that you have in the city in terms of the zoning designations. Vice Chair?
I agree. I don't really see an A finding here. They cannot rely solely on the deed restriction, and I don't think that they can, in this context, rely on their programmatic needs. I don't see the A finding, and I actually have problems with the C finding as well. I think it's a terrible place for residential use. Not only is there no residence for several blocks, there are no retail or anything else that would support residential here. This is a very problematic case, and I think it's really quite weak.
All right, other comments, Commissioner?
Well, I agree with the two of you as regards the A finding and as well the C finding, but I'll go one step further on the C finding and actually say that I'm absolutely concerned that it might be dangerous to have residential here. Now, I know that they do talk about their program being for homeless families, focusing on veterans. They don't really go into detail as to what they mean by families. It seems like they're one-bedroom apartments, but if they're thinking of families, including children, this is most definitely not the place where you would want children wandering around. There's heavy truck traffic. There are rails that are in disuse. There are rails that are in use closer to the water. And I can't think of a more dangerous place to allow young people to walk unattended. So that C finding would definitely be a heavy lift for me.
All right, other comments? Yes.
I would tend to agree with what's been said. I do find it troubling to try to make the A finding solely on what the federal government, a limitation that the federal government is making on a piece of property without going through a process to make that happen other than a deed restriction. The government has a process. It has due process to be able to limit what a piece of property is going to be used for, and they haven't done that. They can seek a waiver. They can seek, they can at least talk to the city and say, this is what we would like to have happen on this piece of property, and get city planning's input on it. And that has not happened, and I would not feel comfortable sort of obfuscating that process that's in place already, and for us to kind of make a decision like that. So I have some real concerns about the A finding.
Commissioner Martinez?
Well, I think the area's in transition. I think once Liberty View Industrial Park is open, it might have a different feel because it will have retail, which is just the adjacent site. Right now, it seems rather desolate. And even though there's covenants in the deed regarding hazardous materials, it wasn't clear to me whether they had done like an air quality survey or noise measurements because of their, and what other uses in the area are still active. Because some of them, it seems like it might, drastically change in the next 10 years, the whole area.
I know, Commissioner Arthur Brown, your, I think, concern at one point was also what are the other uses surrounding here and the intensity of those uses, and what would be the effect of that if one were to introduce 200 units within this area. I think the applicant actually hasn't talked about some serious sea-finding issues that they should speak to. We've seen cases where the board has, I think, with a lot of discerning, allowed some residential in areas that are heavily or significantly industrial. Usually they're in blocks that have some old residential uses on them. The introduction of residential use has been very limited, so they tend to be small buildings. But this is a case where you're proposing 200 units, and I think that not only is it a problem for the residential development vis-a-vis the surrounding uses, but it's also the impact of this on the ability for other users to conduct their businesses. So I think we should be very careful about how if this project meets muster, and even if it does, and somehow they get an A finding, that the scale of this project is sensitive to these issues. And while I agree the area may change, but I don't know whether the area is necessarily going to change towards making it necessarily more compatible with residential, since there are large sites there, and I think there's a big push to continue to have economic development. Okay.
Item number 35, 20813BZ, 1601 Gravesend Neck Road, Brooklyn, Isa Korisanchi.
All right, questions and comments about this case?
Well, it was a no-show at the community
Yes, I
board.
know.
That did not make people happy.
No.
And then one of his drawings says, there are no provisions for ADA since this is a walk-up portion of the building. I don't think that's one of our standard notes. I think that requires some level of explanation.
Yes. Other comments?
The 1988 CO mentions auto repair, spray painting, and I know there's other uses there now, but maybe they could explain what those uses are and give us, are they updating their C of O? I think there's a supermarket, several offices. And also, they said that part of the building has a fire alarm system, and I just want to know, does that include the PCE portion?
Okay. Any other comments? All right.
Item number 36, 28313BZ, 4930 20th Avenue, Brooklyn, Alexander Lefkowitz.
All right, questions and comments? This case?
Thought it was well put together.
But they want to
Yes.
waive 55 parking spaces?
Well,
Yeah.
it seems that there are two issues. One is that it's not clear whether they're planning to enlarge the building or not, because the drawings seem to show that it's not being enlarged, but if you look at their zoning analysis sheet, it seems like it's one FAR right now, and they're taking it to 1.5 in a district which really allows only one. So there's no ability for us to either waive the FAR, or for that matter, to waive the parking. They did provide a response back, I believe, on Friday regarding the parking. I don't know, Commissioner Montes, whether you received that?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, I think it's been distributed. Did other commissioners get it?
I didn't
I don't
see
think-
that.
Okay, all right. I'll make sure that Rory sends it to all the commissioners, but it it's a response that the applicant has made saying that in fact they're not required to provide parking. So we can have a look at that. But if in fact the requirement is for 65 spaces, this special permit has no ability to waive it, so I think we have to be very clear with that. All right, any other comments on this case? Yes.
The building is covered with graffiti, covered on every side.
Okay. Any other comments?
Item number 37, 5714BZ, 1 New York Plaza, Manhattan, the law office of Jay Goldstein.
Any questions or issues with this case? No,
Did
right?
they address signage?
Yes,
They did?
there's a sign plan in the,
Okay.
and a sign analysis.
Also in their statement, they mentioned that there's going to be a physical therapy use there as well. Is that part of the PCE, or is it accessory? Is it
I thought that was
Permitted.
Queens Neck Road.
I'm sorry?
I didn't see that in this one.
I'll double check, but I made a note of it. I'm pretty sure that it was in the statement.
Oh, that's in this one, okay.
Okay. So your question is whether that strictly is a PCE use?
Right.
I don't know how the state regulates that, if it was considered the same as masseuses or they're considered physical therapists. Yeah, we can find it.
Right.
Okay.
This concludes the June 16th review session, 2014, for the Board of Standards and Appeals.